morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I'm your host, Wendy Nystrom, and we're welcoming back Casey Bartram. She is the Executive Director for the TerraGraphics International Foundation, which we are going to call TIFO for short. So welcome back, Casey.
Thanks so much, Wendy, and thanks for having me back.
Anytime. So you actually have a fantastic background. We've already discussed your background extensively, as well as what TIFO does. But could you give us a brief reintroduction of who you are and what you do for TIFO?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm the executive director of TIFO. We're a small nonprofit. So all of us that work here, the few of us that work here, wear a lot of hats. My background's in environmental science. And what TIFO does is really work to prevent pollution from poisoning people. We work in a lot of the communities impacted by hazardous industries, some occupational exposures, a lot of them residential exposures, focus on women and children's health, especially knowing that they're often the most vulnerable and most impacted in a population, and use science and all the tools available to us to figure out how that pollution is poisoning people, and then work with communities to find the best solutions to those problems. So my role is to support those efforts, to be a scientist and also a partner to folks that we work with on the ground.
And I, being someone who's worked in the environmental industry pretty much my whole life, I do love the fact that you focus on the environmental health aspect and helping people, because what I don't think the general population really understands, all the stuff we've kind of put into our soils and water and atmosphere has affected us poorly. We are not doing well. What we are breathing, what we're eating, what we are drinking is damaging us. And what TIFO does is amazing work, because you're focusing on those hard-hit communities and going in there and helping them with that social and environmental justice aspect. And so I know that you have certain aspects you want to talk today, which was one of them, was social and environmental, and how you guys choose your projects, because it's not just you're running out there, hitting everybody up. You actually are very selective.
Yeah, we really are. We have projects in Central Asia, in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. We work with another NGO in Peru. We have a longstanding partnership with state governments in Nigeria. So our projects seem a little bit scattered for that reason, but it's very intentional in terms of where we engage. And that's anywhere that we are invited to participate or support efforts going on in those regions. And so there has to be some request or invitation for TIFO to get involved. We do not go into a community, tell them that they have a problem and tell them how to fix it. From a sustainability standpoint alone, that's not going to be effective, but from a justice standpoint as well, that's extremely problematic. And so we really are an invitation-only organization. And that's important because of all of the things, because in terms of equity and justice, those communities are the people, the individuals and the groups that are going to be able to find the best solutions that work for them. And they bring more knowledge to the table than we could ever bring. We're great nerdy scientists. We know how to identify exposure pathways. So, what you mentioned earlier with identifying the food, the soil, the water, the air that has the contaminants, and which of those are having the greatest impact on health. We know how to do the science behind that. But our partners on the ground have the best idea of what to do with that data and how to act on it. And so that's why it's so important to take that approach. And we really try to be mindful of saviorism and paternalism in these projects and engage in meaningful partnerships along the way.
It is important that people understand these meaningful partnerships, because many times organizations do go in as the savior and say, we're going to fix you, we're going to make you better, without fully understanding, do they need, maybe they need the help, but maybe you're not, doing it correctly. Maybe how you're going about it isn't the best way for that particular community, because you're not raised in that community. You don't know the people there. You don't have that established relationship. So working with people with the boots on the ground, I think, is fabulous and extraordinarily intelligent thing to do. And I wish that a lot more organizations would do that and focus it that way. And, just the way that you guys do your projects. But you also have your, I wanted to bring up the Center for Justice, Governance, and Environmental Action.
Yeah,
and that's with the Kenyan government, I believe. That's pretty impressive that you're doing that.
So that's a great example of how we get engaged in projects. So we were actually contacted by the Center for Justice, Governance, and Environmental Action, which is a Kenyan NGO led by a Goldman Prize winner. And they have been involved in advocating for a variety of environmental justice and social justice issues in Kenya. Among them, a community in Mombasa, Kenya, that's been poisoned by a lead smelter. They reached out to TIFO in 2022, I believe, because they'd heard about our work addressing lead poisoning in Nigeria, supporting the Nigerian government there to address lead poisoning. And they said, we have this horribly contaminated site that's poisoned hundreds of people in this community that continues to poison them every day. And we really need support and assistance in the technical side of implementing a remediation when the government comes through on their commitment to address the problem. And so that's an instance where a local NGO came to us and asked for support, and we provided a letter of intent, expression of interest, some terms of reference that could be used in designing the environmental health response. And the NGO is continuing to fight to get the government to take action on that site. And we're standing by, ready to support in any way that they find helpful along the way. And so it's a classic example of how we can engage. Sometimes it's an NGO reaching out. We've had researchers from academic institutions get in touch. We've had governments reach out to us. We do work a lot with Doctors Without Borders, who has really strong partnerships in the countries that they work in. And so they'll reach out and connect us to their in-country partners. And that sometimes is our invitation and our entry point into working in certain contexts. But there always has to be that initial ask. And that's an important part of how we engage. Absolutely.
You mentioned it is very difficult to get government involved, to get government engaged to actually fix the problem. And we have it in the United States with Flint, Michigan. We're still dealing with contaminated water there. And that's a well-documented, well-known issue. And with other countries and getting people engaged, how do you build those relationships and kind of get them to, progress forward? And I'm sure you've had obstacles. I'm sure you've had a lot of obstacles that you just have to continuously overcome. Is that where the people who are in the community help out, or when you guys come in as there's moral support, I suppose, and also providing that scientific research? How does that work where you kind of get to your end goal?
Yeah, it's a crux in a lot of these projects because you have to have government buy-in in order for them to succeed in the long run. That's a critical piece of any of it. And we have the same challenges working here in the US. This is not something that's just a other places kind of problem. And getting that buy-in takes time. These projects can take 8, 10, 12 years to get from start to finish. And so that's a big piece of it, is making sure that all of your stakeholders are engaged and on board. And it takes time to do that. We saw that in Nigeria, the cleanup we worked on in Nigeria, a lot of it was funded by Nigerian governments, either at the state or federal level. And people don't always know that. We certainly had funding from Doctors Without Borders, from emergency funding from UNICEF, other partners along the way, but there were significant contributions from the Nigerian government. It took time to get those. And it certainly made it harder in the long run in some ways, but more importantly, it made it more sustainable in the long run because they own those projects. And we see the same thing in other countries as well. It's one of the challenges is that governments have so many competing priorities, especially governments in low and middle income countries when they're dealing with a lot of other challenges in addition to some of these environmental health crises. And so understanding that and helping navigate that and tie environmental health crises to other priorities that they're working on. For example, lead poisoning is a challenge to a variety of sectors, right? The education sector, the health sector, the economic development sector. So figuring out where those linkages are with any project and any contaminant we're working on can also really help elevate the issue for the government. And you always can find those local champions, which I think was something that you were touching on as well. There's always those people within the government themselves, within the communities themselves, that are the champions and that are ultimately able to elevate the issue to where it needs to go in order to make headway and get the projects rolling.
Incredibly important to have the people involved and on the ground. But I do love the fact that you touched on something I believe we discussed in our first interview, was how everything is related. Everything is a chain reaction of each other. So when you talked about the lead poisoning and, education and economic growth, everything is connected. Just one little problem, and mind you, lead poisoning is not little, but one problem will have a huge network of effect on an entire community. And if you can resolve that issue, you will actually fix everything downstream of that and kind of bring this community together and thrive. I mean, that's the whole point, is to bring these communities back to thriving, where they're not having contaminated food, water, and air, to keep it that simple.
Exactly.
I tend to oversimplify, but that's my goal here, is to keep it simple. And when you talked about that, and also, people finding you is so important. And you said that, it's invitation only. They have to know you're out there. And one of the things you brought up was TIFO and media, and your exposure in the media. And one of the things that was a very timely thing is talking about how catastrophic storms were usually once in a millennia. They are now an annual event. And this is a very timely discussion. So if you want to go into how you guys are involved in getting more involved in media and television and news.
Yeah, there's a climate crisis going on. Everybody who listens to your podcast, everybody in the world is probably aware of the climate crisis and how critical it is that we act and find solutions, that we are already too late in a lot of ways, but there are still great things that can be done. One of the issues that we're seeing play out in the media right now, right, is with the storms that are ravaging North America, including parts of the US, is that this is something that is getting a whole lot of media attention, as it should. The thing that's not getting media attention is that the solutions to the climate crisis, including having low carbon energy sources, things like solar and wind, are not fully without their own consequences. And that's something we're really trying to elevate in the media. People often call these green energy or renewable energy, but when you really break it down, they're not 100% renewable because they rely on minerals.
Exactly.
So for every wind turbine that you see, there's 1 ton of copper in that wind turbine. Everybody who's owning or planning on owning an electric vehicle, which are great for reducing emissions, those rely on a lot of metals that come from all over the world. Places like the Democratic Republic of Congo, where cobalt is mined and is inextricably linked to the ongoing conflict in that country. Things like lithium, which is mined in Peru under conditions with extreme drought. It's a very water-intensive mineral, and it's mined in the United States increasingly in areas that are impacting indigenous populations here in the US. And so one of the things we are really trying to elevate is having these conversations about how to move forward more equitably and sustainably with these what are called green minerals, these minerals that we need for a more climate-friendly future. We've been working really closely with the Shoshone-Paiute tribe, which is located in southern Idaho, northern Nevada. They're about 40 miles as the crow flies from a new lithium mine that's being put on lands that are sacred to the Shoshone and Paiute peoples. And they haven't had a say in whether that mine gets sited, if it does get sited, how it's done, and they're getting absolutely no compensation for that mine. It's just off of their reservation, and so they have no way to have any control over what's being done, even though they're going to be directly impacted by that operation. So one of the things we really want to see is having a more holistic conversation about what the impacts of climate change and the response to climate change are moving forward, because that's really important when we think about environmental justice when it comes to climate.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you did bring up the fact that we do use these rare elements in all of our solar, wind, electric, lithium ion batteries, electric vehicles. I am a huge supporter of energy diversification. Petroleum is not great. I'm not a fan of it, but diversification, meaning hydrogen's out there. There's new ways of doing nuclear that's available out there. There are multiple ways to look at energy. And we also need to be smarter about how we mine it, where we get it from. When people, I could be wrong, but it's my understanding that in Congo, they are using children to mine the cobalt. Yep. And that is not okay. And we're talking small children that will get hurt. Lithium mining, we're doing that in the United States, and not in the best areas, as you said, with the Native Americans. this is not, our indigenous, this is not okay that we keep bombarding ourselves, oh, we need this now, we're going to do it the way we want and forget about everybody else. That's no longer an okay thing to do. We need to be a little more cognizant of how our actions are affecting other people, not just because the mineral's there, we want it and it's expensive and it'll make us money. We need to kind of pull away from that because we've done nothing but get ourselves into trouble by doing just that. And what Casey and TIFO are doing is helping people get treated fairly and equitably and positively. And that's what we need to pull away from and focus on the good rather than it's there, we want it, we're going to take it. So sorry to go on a little bit of a soapbox there, but it does irk me when people say, I want that, I'm going to take it now. It's like, did you think it through?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you are protecting people.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I've heard it called by the chairman of the Shoshone-Paiute tribe, green colonialism. That's really how they view.
I understand that completely. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the layers of injustice that have been visited upon Native American communities in this country are, we don't have time to dive into that, and I won't do it justice. But yeah, there should be more mining done in the United States because we do have the ability to regulate it in a way that is safer than the way it's done in places like the Democratic Republic of Congo, as an example. And so we need to be avoiding NIMBY and making sure that we're not always not in my backyard when it comes to mining. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we place it on communities within the United States that already bear a disproportionate burden of environmental and social injustice, which is what has happened traditionally with American Indian tribes. And so that's not to say that there isn't a way forward, and it's not to throw up our hands in the air and say, oh, well, there's no great solution, but it needs to be a more holistic conversation, and there need to be voices at the table that right now are not being listened to at all.
Also, it's the way we think things through. What you had mentioned earlier when we were emailing each other was everyone needs the bright, shiny new toy. They want the brand new phone, they want the brand new computer. I just finished a tour in Nashville of a whole bunch of e-waste recycling facilities, and I saw pallets, multiples of pallets of laptops just stacked, electronics stacked, tablets stacked, because people, after a year, maybe 2 years, they want the new toy, or there's got a new feature that I have to have. We need to stop doing that. This over-consumerism has gotten way out of control, and the tech giants, they're feeding on that because it's profit, I get it, but it's created so much waste, especially these rare elements that we need, that we just keep mining for. And speaking of mining, I know friends in the mining industry. It has changed quite a bit, especially in the US. They are making it much more environmentally aware and cleaner, where a girlfriend of mine is like, you wouldn't even recognize it. Because, we all think of the oldie-timey days of what mines look like. And she's like, you wouldn't even recognize it. It looks so completely different. We're very conscious about how we do things. And I thought, fantastic, that's great. Because I think I was talking to her, what was it? I forget, it was maybe ulexite is the mineral. That's one of the minerals used in the manufacturing of lithium-ion batteries. And, she's like, it's completely different. You would not recognize it. And we are doing things better. We just need to continue that progression forward and doing and thinking before we act or do, which is very hard for a lot of people. So, Casey, I really hope that you guys dive into more of this because we need you. I think, not just the United States, but the entire globe needs people like you to make people stop and think and fix it and think, follow through on the things.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Yeah, we have a lot of work to do, all of us, and rolling up our sleeves. But I really do believe firmly that there is a path forward. I don't think, I don't feel fatalistic about it at all. I think there is a lot of hope. I think there's a lot of great scientists who email and knock on our door all the time saying, how can we get involved? What can we do? And I have a lot of hope for the solutions that we can all find together. So, yeah, I think often when we're having these conversations, it gets very doom and gloom, but there have been great advances in mining technology as an example. And there are mines out there that are operating in ways that are less impactful and more sustainable. And so, does it impact profit margins? Yes. Does it make it not profitable? Absolutely not. There is a way that it can be done in a way. There's a way it can be done so that it doesn't have as much impact. And and making sure that people are engaged in the conversation that need to be from the very beginning, including those communities that bear those impacts. So yeah, I don't want to get lost in this conversation, that there really is hope, and there's a way forward, I think.
And I love the fact that you said you have people knocking on your door all the time. I can honestly say the younger generation, the ones coming right out of college, they are very much aware of the environment and our impact on our resources and what we are doing, whether it's right or wrong. And they are choosing to not work for companies that do not align with their morals. Back when I was a kid, it was, who's going to hire me? I just need a job. And now, seriously, it was like, I got bills. I just need a job. These kids are like, I'm going to focus on, what aligns with what I want to do. And I want to make things better. And I'm going to focus on that. And I think it's great, because that means that's an entire industry that I've watched blossom in the past 35 years, which phenomenon. And, I'm really hopeful that we will see that change start to catapult and snowball and really take effect.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that perspective that you see that shift. And I think I'm gonna take that as my good news for the day, for sure. I agree. One of the big pieces of TIFO's mission is education and capacity building, and that includes the students that work with us in building capacity in the next generation of scientists. And so we have this great opportunity to see students who, everything from undergraduate to graduate to postgrad, who really have that passion to use their knowledge and their newfound skills for good. And we get to see that as well. So it's really, maybe that's why we're able to have so much hope, is because we get to work with those individuals. And it is really inspiring to see all the people who care about building a better tomorrow. And that's a very fortunate role for us to be in.
It's a fantastic role. I mean, you get to see it as it's happening, as it's growing. I mean, what a fantastic place to be. It just sounds like fun. But before I let you go, though, how do people find you? What's the best way for people to get in touch if they want to volunteer, if they want to start knocking on your door and work with you guys, or more importantly, invite you to help them?
Absolutely. The best way to find all of that information is on our website, www.TerraGraphicsInternational.org or TerraFound.org. Both of them will get you to the same place. There's information in there about how to reach out to us. We have a lot of great information about the different projects we're working on. You can sign up for our newsletter. Any of those things will be a great way to get in touch with us. We're also on social media, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, where we post a lot of fun pictures from our project sites all over the world. So that's another great way to be sure to follow us. YouTube as well. And please share the stories too. Let people know what's going on, and increase awareness of these issues and the great work that's being done around them.
Absolutely love it. Casey, thank you so much for your time. You guys are doing amazing work, as always. And folks, don't worry. We're going to have Casey back very shortly to do more interviews about more detailed information on what TIFO is doing. And please check out their website, TerraFound.org.
Yep, that's the easy way to do it.
That's the easy one, TerraFound.org. So guys, I'm Wendy Nystrom, your host with Environmental Social Justice. We are now proudly sponsored by BioLargo. They are making life better. And we will talk to you later. You guys have a great day. Thank you.